I want to be surprised by this whiskey. I want to be shocked by this whiskey. I might even want to be a little scared by this whiskey. Let me tell you why. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Matt. I'm a whiskey nerd, and like I said, I want to be surprised by this whiskey. So let me get it into the glass and I'll tell you why. It is actually also going to be the first time I taste this whiskey. It's Fox's Bow whiskey from the Malt Liquor Company in Limerick, Ireland. Ooh, yes. Now, what do I mean when I say I want to be scared or shocked or surprised by this whiskey? Well, it's very simple. The Malt Liquor Company didn't make this whiskey. This is sourced whiskey. Now that's not uncommon. A lot of whiskey producers in Ireland and Scotland and America, they'll use sourced whiskey when they want to start up their brand because they haven't had enough time to distill and mature their own stock of whiskey. So no points against them for that. The concern I have is that I might have already drunk this whiskey just under a different label. So you see, because there aren't many whiskey producers in Ireland, a lot of distilleries, when they're opening up, when they're sourcing their whiskey, they have to go to the same places. In this case, they've gone to the Great Northern Distillery. That's a huge powerhouse of a distillery. It's a mothership of a distillery, and it produces a lot of whiskey for a lot of different brands. One of the most common types of whiskey they'll produce is that classic Irish whiskey combination of a blended whiskey that's been aged in bourbon and finished in sherry casks. Now, this is a great little combination for a couple of reasons. Irish whiskey, it's going to be smoother, it's going to be lighter, it's going to be a bit sweeter, so it's going to take on a lot of the vanilla and a lot of caramel you get from the bourbon, but it's also going to take on some fruitiness and some nuttiness from the sherry. So it actually is a very, very good combination. The problem is, it's just been done a lot. So to make this a little bit different, what the Malt Liquor Company have done with Fox's Bow is they've added in a little bit of whiskey that was aged in rye casks. Now, rye, it's an American whiskey. It's made with, as you might imagine, rye grains. So it's got a bit of spice, it's got a bit of eucalyptus, it's got some kind of different notes that'll maybe add in some different notes to the finished whiskey here and make it just a bit different from that classic combination that I've tasted a dozen times before. They've also bottled it at 43% alcohol by volume, so it's going to have a little bit more presence than a standard 40%er, so I really hope that that comes through in the glass, and I really want to be surprised by this whiskey. They described it as a quality, unfussy whiskey, so let's see if it lives up to that. Let's go in for the nose. Okay, I am getting a little bit of a different vibe on the nose, like it's got a bit more of a kind of floral characteristic coming through. I mean, I'd imagine that because that rye cask, like I said, it's got those kind of herbal, eucalyptus, kind of spicy notes coming through. So that's, I think it does have a presence in there. I think it does make it a little bit different. But then underneath that, the classic, just the kind of caramel, vanilla sweetness. You got the little bit of sherry, almost, there's almost like an almond nuttiness, maybe not almond directly, but a little bit of nuttiness, a little hint of something different in there. So the nose is promising something different than the standard Irish whiskey, so let's go in for the palate and see if it delivers. Okay. First sip, definitely spice once you swallow it. Like on the side of my tongue, a nice bit of spice. Initially I was met with kind of vanilla, a little bit of fruit, that kind of, again, the classic notes. Like this is going to be mostly those classic Irish whiskey flavors, your vanilla, your caramel, your fruitiness from your sherry, but there is that bit of spice. There is actually that little bit different. Like I definitely noticed it as soon as I swallowed, that there was that little bit of spice on the side of my tongue, a little bit different than a standard whiskey. So I'm going to go in again and going to see if I can unpack that spice a bit more. Okay, I will say the kind of mouthfeel on this whiskey, it's kind of medium. It's not like heavy, it's not oily like you might associate with a pot still. It's not really dense or like thick. It's not honeyed in sweetness. It's more just like a nice medium mouthfeel. It's not low, it's not like light, it's not kind of just watery and falling away like you might expect with a sourced 40% whiskey. So it is a little bit denser, and I do appreciate that. Like it's not just falling away, it does hang around with you. And then that spiciness that I was getting on the first sip, it's still there. It's more of a like a light white pepper spice, maybe mixed with some cinnamon or some clove. That kind of just that darker, like tingly spice, as opposed to kind of the baking spices or the cinnamon spices you might normally associate with sherry finishes. So I'm going to go in again, I'm going to talk about the finish and see what hangs around the longest. Okay, the finish, the longest note for me that hangs around is I think a return to that same kind of floral note I was getting on the nose. Like, it definitely made an appearance in the finish as soon as I finished swallowing. Once I took that first breath, it didn't really show up in the palate, the floral note. It's more there in the finish. There's a bit of spice, a bit of like almost a little bit of toasted oak, but not a huge amount. It's very light on the toasted oak. It's not really one note dominating. Like the vanilla, the caramel, the fruitiness, they all kind of fade at the same time. That floral note, it definitely made an appearance, and it faded pretty quickly. And I suppose for me, the longest note that I'm getting is that kind of tingly mouthfeel. It's kind of mouth-watering. It does kind of make you want to go back. It does make you want to sip it again to see what else you can unpack. There's not a huge evolution on the finish, so if you're looking for a whiskey that's going to deliver something unique on the nose, something unique in the palate, and something completely unique on the finish, it's probably not going to be there. This is just, I mean, they did say it's an unfussy quality whiskey, and I think that's kind of what they delivered here. This isn't an expensive whiskey. It's also non-chill filtered, and it comes in at 43%, and it does have that little bit of rye finishing to kind of add in a different note, so it is going to be a bit different than a normal sourced whiskey. So if you're looking for something completely unique in an Irish whiskey sphere, this might not be the one for you. But if you're looking for something that's kind of easy to drink and it's going to be different to all those other sourced whiskies that you can buy from all the other new whiskey distilleries that are coming out, this one from Malt Liquor Company might be the one for you. So was I surprised by this whiskey? A little bit, yeah. Was I shocked by this whiskey? Not really. I mean, I did expect it to be solid. I did expect it to be a nice whiskey because, I mean, as I said, that classic bourbon and sherry combination, it's a winner in my books. The rye casks added a little bit of new note to it, added a little bit of different, kind of made it different, kind of made it interesting, and so I think I enjoyed it from that regard. This was their first release, so I am looking forward to seeing what they come out in future, if they can keep up that experimentation, if they keep adding in different casks and seeing which one works for them to make different types of whiskies, because that is one of the powers of Irish whiskey. It just has to be aged in a wood barrel, so distilleries can use cherry wood, they can use oak, they can use cypress, or they can use spruce. They can use a lot of different types of wood to impart different flavors onto the whiskey. So if they're already starting off with an experimentation into something different, I hope that they continue that in future releases. And I think that's where I'm going to leave this review. I enjoyed the whiskey. I think I'm going to keep on enjoying this, and I'll see you next time. Sláinte.